Hello and welcome to Thrive and Survive. This is the first part of a series of webinars to help new students and those who support them navigate the transition and orientation to ANU. My name is Isabel Michael and I am a third year Law and Arts student here at the ANU. I grew up in the small country town of Deniliquin, which is on the New South Wales-Victorian border, and that makes me a rural student. I've lived on campus for the last 3 years at Unilodge and I'm currently a senior resident there. I am here today with master's student Zora Pang. Zora, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Zora Pang and I'm from China originally. I'm currently doing a master's degree of art history and curatorial studies. And I'm living off campus. And I'm a student leader of Set4 ANU mentoring program at the moment.
Wonderful. And today we have a very special guest, our Vice-Chancellor, Professor Brian Schmidt, here for a candid chat about the ANU experience. So thank you for joining us today, Vice-Chancellor.
Thank you.
It's wonderful to have you here. Could you please start by outlining to new students joining us today, what is your role at ANU?
So I'm what they call the Vice Chancellor, but I'm also known as the President. So I am the person who ultimately runs the university from day to day. We have a council with a Chancellor, Julie Bishop, our Foreign Minister of days of past. She's my boss, and she's sort of like the chair of the board, and I'm the CEO. So my job is to try to make sure that ANU knows what it's doing, so how is it going to be a great university? How do we make sure the students have a great education and a great time while they're here? But I also try to make sure, how do you build new buildings, keep them clean? How do you keep people safe in a COVID-19 pandemic? So I get to sort of do a little bit of everything.
Okay, wow. So your academic journey is quite extraordinary and it's led you to win a Nobel Prize in Physics in 2011. So we're very lucky to have you as our Vice-Chancellor. Many think of you as a Harvard graduate, but you actually did your undergrad at the University of Arizona, I'm told. So like ANU, the University of Arizona was known for research. What made you pick the University of Arizona and how was your time there?
Yeah, so I grew up in the state of Alaska, and so Deniliquin is remote, but I'm really remote, okay? So I grew up more remote than most people did, although I grew up in a pretty big town, Anchorage up there. So actually, in some sense, Anchorage is less remote than Deniliquin. It's just a long ways away from anything. And I wanted to go and study astronomy. It took me a little while to reach that, and the University of Arizona is a large institution, quite a bit bigger than ANU. And it doesn't do as much research as ANU does, but it's exceptionally good in certain areas, astronomy being one of them. That's where a lot of the telescopes are. So I chose to go there, and for me, the coldest state to the hottest state in the United States. And Tucson, Arizona is hot. It hits 50 degrees sometimes there. And it's a lot of days over 40. And dealing with a place where it never got above 25 for me as when I grew up in Alaska, that shock of the climate, I actually did find a lot quite difficult. My first, time at university, there's a lot of people who are, from all over the country, all over the world, quite different than you. That's exciting. But there's, a rhythm of studying, and I would say my first year there, I struggled a bit. I was in a residence hall, but my residence hall was underneath the football stadium, 6 people in a room, shared bathrooms at the end, not nearly as nice as here, no air conditioning that worked. So that was challenging. But I, soon started making friends. Really enjoyed my studies and spent a lot of time focusing on that. But yeah, it was a big change from Alaska. But I think it's a bit easier here at ANU than what I had at the University of Arizona. But it was an experience that ultimately made me.
Yeah, wonderful. So how did your own time at university influence how you see our community here at ANU? And how is ANU planning to support its vision for an excellent student experience?
Well, of course, I went from University of Arizona, a very large state university, to Harvard, which is, sort of the pinnacle. And so you get to see what makes Harvard different than Arizona, and there's many, many good things, and there's some things at Harvard that you're like, oh, I don't want to have that here either. So it's finding that balance of what I like between the state school and the private school. And one of the things that Harvard does really well is it really looks after its students. And it has a very diverse group of students from around the world. And that's something that ANU has in it. It has a really rigorous undergraduate and graduate education. ANU is that way as well. And so for me, it's a matter of looking at what I loved about my times at those institutions and trying to imprint in an Australian way what that might look like at ANU. And for me, it's about making sure that when people are here, it's not just, it's not you just go to class and get a degree. It's actually an experience. It's being able to meet interesting people from around the world who are doing things different than you, being able to interact with people in buildings like this. So it's more than just going to class. It's more than just getting the grades. It's a whole complex experience that helps you grow up, learn what you are, what you want to be, and gives you the skills and the relationships to go out and change the world however you want. So that's sort of how my experience is translated into what I want to do here.
Yeah, great. So I guess you have a huge vision for excellent student experience here at ANU, and you've particularly spoken about that for international students. What are some of the things that ANU is doing to try and improve student experience overall?
So I think it's really connecting the academics that we have with the students, and so it's not just formulaic. I want people when they come here to be able to interact with other students from diverse backgrounds, interact with, thinking that's maybe different than what you grew up with, and interact with our staff members. So, in first year, the reality is it tends to be larger classes and you're settling down, and so it's not so much in that first year, but in the second and third years, the master's programs, I really want to have that human interaction rather than it just being a machine that pops you out. So that means embedding things throughout not just the curriculum, but the experience. I want people to come to campus, and I want them to therefore have those interactions in the library, here in our Mari Ray Center, out in Cambry, in the areas of the campus where they're studying. So that's what I think is important. It's human, not machine.
Yeah, I love that. So knowing what you know now, why have today's audience made a fantastic choice in choosing ANU?
Well, I think ANU is, a great university. It's not just a good university, it's actually a great university. And when I think about my experience at both Harvard and the University of Arizona, the students here are able to go out and interact with the best people in the world. When I go and I see our students doing their degrees and going off, for example, to Caltech or to Harvard or to Cambridge, they're some of the best prepared students from anywhere in the world. And that's consistent feedback I get. So it's a great prep on that academic side. But it's also much more diverse than a Harvard is, or even a University of Arizona. We have students from many more backgrounds, especially around the world, all over Asia, all over Australia. And that diversity, I think, gives people a broader perspective, because the world of the future isn't going to just be your little part of the world. It's going to be the whole globe. And we connect you to that here, and that's why I think it's a great place.
Yeah, I think in my experience that's been the same. So, rumour has it that you are now a parent of an ANU student yourself.
I am, yes.
Have you got any advice to parents or carers who might be watching this session today?
So I think the best thing for parents is to take a deep breath and say, my child is going off to a great institution. It's going to have some ups and downs, but this is a chance for them to learn and discover themselves. And you don't want to micromanage them. And it's okay to be worried a bit, but at some point you have to trust your student, because if they've gotten in here, they're clearly very capable. And you're going to have to allow them to make some mistakes. And it's a great environment. It's not with zero risk, but it's one of the safest places anywhere in the world that you can study. And you're going to have to allow your child to go out and make their own discoveries, find their own way, make their own mistakes, but hopefully in the end come out a fantastic person.
Yeah. I think in lots of ways it's often harder for parents than for students.
Yeah, I remember my mother crying when I left the first time. Mm-hmm. And when I came back, she had kind of figured out that actually it's kind of convenient not having you to work on, and had ended up doing lots of things. But we had lots of, talk to them on a regular basis. I make sure I have conversations with my kids all the time. Find out what they're doing, just talk to them about the world. Yeah. And live vicariously a little bit about them as they discover the world. For a parent, your child here can really give an insight into what's happening in the world in a way that you might not get at home.
Mm. Yeah, I think as an international student, I feel that especially strong because I was here by myself for many years. And it's just been difficult in a way, but the challenge really helped me grow.
Yep.
And like when you talk about making mistakes, I think that's kind of a very important aspect of growing up, and finding what you actually really want.
Yep. Yeah. As successful people, not everyone makes mistakes. I make mistakes every day. Successful people realize they're making mistakes and learn how to fix their mistakes up quickly. That's what success looks like.
Yeah, and that's definitely something you learn at uni. So, as I mentioned earlier, I'm from the small country town of Deniliquin, which is in regional New South Wales, and we've been really heavily affected by drought and other environmental issues, and obviously lots of our students have been affected by this year's horrific bushfires. So I'm wondering how ANU is leading on issues like these.
Yeah, so these are global issues, and whether or not you're from China, you're from rural Australia, you're from Alaska, where I grew up, which is the temperature changes there are amazing, just crazy. The place looks like a different place. So, ANU is doing a whole range of things. Right at the very beginning, we've been a leading place for understanding climate change and the effects of climate change, and we continue to be that. We have 2 people on the IPCC who are leaders of that. So we're really focusing on just understanding the problem, but we're also thinking about how do you adapt. We have people, in your part of the world who are understanding how do you make farms of the 21st century highly productive but sustainable. We're thinking about how do we create new industries involving renewables. So, trying to look at how we might create not just little solar farms, but huge solar farms that provide electricity cheaper than we get right now. Here, this building right now is being run fully renewable, and it's done fully renewable because the researchers at ANU worked with the ACT government to be one of the first countries in the world to go 100% renewable. And so not only is the university 100% renewable, the whole community we live in is 100% renewable with respect to electricity. So we're really focusing in on our own activities as well. We have researchers who have new technology in terms of really high efficiency solar PV coming online. We have people who are looking at how you integrate batteries into grids. We have people looking at how you might make green steel out of all this renewable. So we have people working on pretty much any and every aspect of climate change and adaptation that you can think of. So we're going to be the ones, and our students, who help navigate the challenges we have. But it's not just saying there's a problem, it's actually fixing the problem. And so we're doing both. We're identifying what the issues are, understanding them, and then coming up with solutions.
Yeah. Yeah, talking about sharing knowledge and new technologies, I saw on your blog you attended a meeting at like 2 a.m.
Yes.
the other morning. And so how did you cope with time zone differences, and how have you generally coped with moving so much of your work online during this COVID time?
Yeah, well, I've always been a very technically savvy person, and I had started pushing Zoom out to people long before it was cool. We had an ARC Center of Excellence, and we installed video conferencing in each of the units back in 2010, before that was normal, and that allowed us to do video conferencing rather than flying all over the place all the time. So I was already in that mind, trying to get all my colleagues in the same state of mind. Well, COVID-19 definitely got them there. Time zones are always a problem for Australians. You know, one of the godsends for me is I don't have to travel as much, and people are happy to have you come in online. Everyone's used to it. But the challenge, of course, is the meetings still happen at 2 in the morning when they're in Europe. And normally you hop on a plane and you feel dead tired for 24 hours, and that's just part of it. Now you have to adapt. And so if I'm having, for example, that 2 a.m. meeting, I knew it was coming up, and I actually scheduled my life differently. I moved things to be later. I had a chance to take a nap. The next day, I didn't start at 6 in the morning like I normally do, because when you're doing things, you need to adapt. You can't just say, oh, I'll just do this as a one-off. You actually have to think about the system and say, I used to have to, spend 3 days off to travel there. Now I'm going to have to spend 8 hours adapting and quite frankly, sleeping. None of us are immune to needing sleep, and something students need to think about when they're trying to cram things in at the end. You're not at your peak productivity at 4 in the morning, it turns out.
Absolutely. I totally know what you mean.
Yeah.
And so have you got any tips for students who are studying online remotely and on getting the most out of the online learning experience?
Yeah. So the remote learning experience is, you can get most of what you want out, but you got to remain in a positive frame of mind. And so it's really important for people to think about, how am I going to make this work, rather than this isn't what I was expecting. And it's the same thing with digital. So I'll give you an example. Last night we hosted the first female Prime Minister of Australia, Julia Gillard, and the first female Governor General of Australia, Quentin Bryce, and we had a conversation. And normally they would be right at the end of a very big theater. Instead, they're bam, right there. And it's like having a conversation this close to them. And at the end of it, it's like, this is actually better than live. It's more intimate. You can ask more questions. And so if you frame your mind and say, well, I wasn't there live, but I actually got something that was better, right? I think that's what people need to think is about, how do I make this work? And being, accept the things that sometimes the internet goes out and everyone's trying their best, but also constructive and say, if we tried this, this would be better for me. Can we try that? And, we're all trying to make things work. And if it's constructive, when people give me a good idea, I don't yell at them. I go, thank you. That's a really interesting idea. Let's try it.
Yeah, totally. I had a similar experience last semester. We had to move online because I'm studying art history, so we're trying to make an exhibition. But then we have to move the exhibition online, and we created an online exhibition that was the first time in my life, and it's really cool. Yep. So,
It's not quite what you were expecting, but it's different and good. And we need to get into that mind.
Totally.
Yep. Everything I do is different. And sometimes it's not good because I'm learning, but boy, have I had a chance to learn. This is an experience to learn, and it's sort of sped up the future. So what we're doing is we're all part of history, because I think this was coming, but it's sped it up. And so for me here at ANU with our students, it's not just saying, okay, the whole world is digital. It's saying, okay, we're fully digital right now, but now when we come back, and many people will hopefully be able to be back, how do we use digital to actually make teaching and learning better, not just replace what we used to do. It's actually making it better. And so that's the frame of mind we need to be in going forward.
Totally. And while we're discussing the disruption of COVID-19, could you outline the university's response? For example, its staged return to campus, things like that?
Yeah, so, like everyone, it was a bit of a panic as you suddenly start realizing this is unfolding and you don't know what's going to happen. And what I've learned is it's much easier to close a university down than to open it back up. Because, we didn't know what was going, so we closed it down so that bad things didn't occur. Now that we've started opening up, we're trying to tell people, sort of give them some sense of what's coming. So the staged return to campus right now, anyone who wants to be here more or less can be here, but you need to have a card to get in. And we are bringing students back for next semester, and we're doing that because we think we can do it in a way that's safe. So we have one of the best public health faculties in the world here. It's been incredibly good. And there are little tricks you can play in public health to make things safe. It is probability. It's not black and white. It's not 100% safe. It's not zero. You got to play the probabilities, and that's what we're doing. But you also need to be prepared to react. And so I'm not going to look everyone in the eye and say, guaranteed we're going to stay open no matter what. Nope. We are responsible for our own destiny. And so we're 1.5 meters away right now. That's great. But we need to be prepared to, when we see people who may not know the rules or may have forgot about them. So I think we need to just have a community conversation, and we can get 98% what we want done just by being careful. And if we are careful, then we will persevere and probably won't get a COVID-19 shock. But if, for whatever reason, as a community, we are unable to keep COVID-19 out, then I'm sorry to say we'll have to wind things back. But my hope is things will be a little different. And while a lot of our classes next semester are still going to be remote learning, I'll be talking to the deans about how we can get all sorts of other programs beyond just the classes to try to make sure it's a fun, vibrant life. I think you guys know campus is not just your classes, it's other things. And indeed, the class is only 3 hours a day, right? It's the other 8 hours that make campus kind of interesting.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So we are getting a bit close for time, and thank you for joining us today, Vice Chancellor. But before you go, I know that both you and Zora share a passion for the kitchen. So quickly, how has that helped you both manage your mental health and your well-being?
Oh, well, Zora, why don't you go first?
So I think for me, because I'm typical Chinese, I love making dumplings, and I make them from scratch. It's very time consuming. It's not like, nowadays we usually cook as fast as we can and go to work, takeaways. But it's a moment of just taking time and reconnect to yourself, focus on this one small thing.
Yeah, and I'm quite the same. And I cook and I do my winemaking, which I have, because it's relaxing and you're thinking about doing something and doing it well. That tends to be very much of your hands. But what I like about cooking is at the end of the day, you get a really good meal.
Yeah.
And so it's pretty quick reward. Most of the stuff I do doesn't have really quick rewards in this job. And so being able to, in my case, make tortellini. I sometimes make dumplings as well, probably not nearly as well as you, and I tend to have all the modern conveniences of food processors and all sorts of things, and so I do cook for almost like a creative outlet, but it's also just a time of contemplation. I'll be thinking about work while I'm cooking, making my little tortellinis. And then I said, oh, I have a good idea. I better write that down somewhere. Okay, keep working.
Absolutely, that's very similar. It's a very creative process for me too.
Yeah, and it's almost like meditative when you're doing it because you're just doing it to
Exactly.
do it.
And as I said, I love to eat too. So.
Yeah, well, that works too.
Yeah, it helps you stay healthy.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. So is there anything else that you wanted to say to our new students who are about to embark on a very exciting adventure here at ANU?
Well, we look forward to having you on campus as soon as you can get here, and I know that is going to be a different amount of time for everyone. And what I really want people to think about is each day we're getting closer and closer to having a normal life ahead of us, but there's going to be ups and downs. But think about the long term, about what do I want to do, and go with the punches. Make sure you do the best you can. It's not going to be perfect, but it is a great environment if you're able to get here, and we will help you, figure out how to even make it a better environment. Because, a university isn't the vice chancellor telling you how to have fun. It's basically saying, here's a space, you design it yourself, right? And hopefully it's a whole bit of thinking about the universe in all of its manifestations, whether it's human or beyond the earth, as I do, and interacting that into sort of every activity of life. And it's such an exciting time. When I meet our alums around the world, more times than not, they will say, this was the best time of my life. And can I say, my university career, despite the crazy, amazing life I've had, still the best time of my life was when I was at university.
Well, I'm sure that's what all of our wonderful new students can expect. So thank you everyone for joining us today on this very special instalment of Thrive and Survive. I'd really like to thank you for joining us today, Vice Chancellor and Zora, and I'd like to wish you all the best for your very first week of university. Thank you for watching. Thank you. Bye.